Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of Porch Talk. This is episode number 8 on our special guest series. This is a special episode we're doing today. It's in memory of Coach Ray Jones, which is a local football legend. I think a lot of people would say is probably one of the best defensive minds in this area. So we've had a lot of great guests come on here today to share stories about him. Before we get to that, I do want to mention the restaurant that's hosting us tonight is Bonanza in Lebanon, 2243 Main Street, Lebanon, Virginia, 24266. If y'all decide to get out this way, they got a great buffet. The ribeye is great, and we're very thankful for them hosting us. Hey, J-Mar, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, we'll start off. We'll go around the table. You can introduce yourselves. Kind of went over it already. Just say how you knew Coach, what capacity you worked with him, played for him, stuff like that. And then we'll get into some stories. But Jake, you want to go first?
Yeah, Jake Yates. Started playing for Ray when I was in 7th grade, and ended up coaching with him for 7 or 8 years.
Mike Webb. Played for Ray from 92 through 95, and then coached with him in the early 2000s.
Great.
Greg Rife. I worked with Ray, starting out in the education system and taught with him for roughly 20 years. And during that time, I got to know him well as a coach and an educator and as a friend. And he was definitely one of a kind to work with.
I know we have some storytellers here today, but most of it should be true. We're not telling fishing stories, so no lies will be told. So, for the most part, I think we all have a great story, a great memory. Even, me and Cameron also we played for him and had him as teachers. So I think we'll have a lot of fun. But remembering him, Jake, I guess you probably, somebody mentioned you were the first one to really play for him. What's your first memories? I guess you said 7th grade maybe?
Yeah, he came to me 3 or 4 games in the Little League season. He was a referee in some of the games, and he asked me, he said, "Reckon your dad let you come up and play with the 8th and 9th grade team?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd do that," and which later I found out I wasn't ready for that move yet. I'd only played 1 year of ball, and so I'm out here with Ray, and he's using terminology I couldn't even start to grasp, and I'm getting knocked around. And so, of course, later me getting pretty frustrated, about ready to quit. And he finally said, "Listen," he said, "I'll work with you. I'll help you. You can." And so all the years from 7th grade on that I played for him, coached with him, he always taught me something. He always broke something down, and always had a lesson there to teach me more about football. So,
Yeah, and I think that, I'm kind of jealous in some way that I never got to see him at a younger age, because whenever I got to hear all the terminology and stuff, I mean, it was still amazing. But, the energy and stuff that he had, I imagine whenever he coached with you guys.
You come from a Little League program where it was, fullback dive left, fullback dive right, halfback sweep, and you get into Ray's world. It's completely different, and that was before Madden, so we didn't get to learn it that way.
Yeah.
Where had so we'll kind of go back a little bit farther than that. But what was his first year at Garden? You remember?
I don't know.
Somebody said something about 75 on Facebook. Is that what they said?
I think so.
So that may be right around there. But
Yeah.
We should have done some research, I guess. But where did he move into here from? Do y'all know?
He was originally from Richland.
From Richlands originally? Okay.
Yeah.
For some reason in my head I thought he was from out of here. But so Richlands where he went. So he went to Emory, correct?
Played football
at Emory.
Richlands and played football at Emory.
Okay. So, I guess we throw that out there. I don't know I'm assuming most people around here that's going to listen to this know who we're talking about. But I do remember him playing for Emory. Like he was pretty loyal to Emory. It feels like from what I remember we had,
Yeah.
But Mike, what you said you played for him also?
I did, but I was exposed to Ray. I grew up in the Key Mountain camp, so I was a quarter mile from the high school. So in the summer, when 2 days was going, I was always up there from 8 years old till until I started playing. And my dad played for him in 77, or he graduated in 77, so it might have been 76 football season. So he was there. And the first memory I have of Ray was an old Polaroid that floated around of him on all fours eating grass. And it was like local folklore that this guy would eat a handful of aspirin, and if he ran out of aspirin, he'd start with grass. And you could always hear him. I mean, his voice when he started talking. But I was exposed to him early. Ray probably wasn't as much cut out. I don't ever recall him working with like the Little League programs that much. So, but he was always fond of kids. That's what he wanted to teach. He was more friendly with, and then until you got under him, and it was a little bit different. But I was exposed to Ray for a long time. Then I played for him. He was our defensive coordinator all 4 years I was there. He had some health issues a little bit of my senior year, but played for him, and he was as advertised as far as knowing, and we'll tell stories, but
that as advertised part of it, I heard this, Dad talk about him, everybody in my family talk about him, and I was like, "There's no way this could be real." Day one, I realized it's like, this was exactly what everybody said it would be. So he lived up to all those expectations for sure. What was your first time? You remember the first time you were interaction with him, Coach? Or?
Yes, I do. I've kind of learned through life lessons. People that insult you, they either like you or they dislike you a lot. So every morning when I come to check in as a new teacher, Ray would be in the main office, and then it was a different insult every day. And during that time, and I think he liked me. Sometimes I do. I'm not for sure, but he acted at times like he did. But he was just a funny guy. I even laughed at his jokes when I was the butt end of it there. But one of his favorite ones, during that time, I was, getting a little older and starting to lose a little bit of hair. Then there was no saying here today, gone tomorrow. And Ray would substitute hair in for here. And he'd look at me and say, hair today, gone tomorrow. Then he had a habit of covering his mouth and said, and look, who said that? Who said that? Who said that? And anybody that's ever been around Ray has seen him do that. But, I was predominantly a basketball coach, but I coached football as well, and I coached JV football. Well, there was one year Ray had such integrity with the game and the people and the players that, if he felt like they were not meeting his expectations, which were high, he would take himself out of the game, and he wouldn't coach anymore. And it had nothing to do with anybody else. It was just his own personal belief, the way he was. So, one year he came down and helped me with the JV, and we had a really good team, and we ended up going undefeated that year. And he was shutting people out, and we were running a single wing offense, and we were putting on about 40 points a game, and we went over to Hayside, and we played a game over there. And this is probably one of the funniest, earlier experiences I had with Ray, and I'm just shaking my head at it. But we were playing at Sand Lake, and we beat them pretty bad at Sand Lake. And it's pretty tough to go over to Hayside and beat Hayside in any sport. Well, at the end of the game, Curtis Shortridge, he was a coach, and he drove the bus over. So we got the boys loaded up, and then here comes Kurt, he's on the bus. And as he goes by this elderly lady, and she's a grandma, she's up in her 70s, And boy, she let in on Kurt there, and old Kurt just smiled at her and just kept on walking and got on the bus. Well, I was next in line, and boy, when I came by her, she just hammered me too, and I was just so terrified. I looked down at the ground, and just kept walking. I didn't shared eye contact with her, And then I got on the bus, and I said, "Well, shut the door." Then here come Ray. And then when Ray got up to her, boy, she let in on Ray, and she told him her business and how bad we cheated and all that. And Ray started firing back at her. And it started going back and forth, and me and Kurt's just looking at each other on the bus and shrugging our shoulders. And then Ray finally came, he finally left without getting attacked. And then he got on the bus, and I looked at him. I said, Ray, I said, you just couldn't help it. You couldn't resist, could you? You had to run that mouth. And he said, he looked at me and he said, he started jumping up and down. He was shadowboxing. He said, I'm a southpaw. He said, I could have took her in 5. And I told Ray, I said, Ray, I said, she had reach on you with her purse and that umbrella. I said, I don't know if you could have got in on her or not. But that was the type of guy he was. But really, personally, as I got to know him over the years, the only people that I truly know that he didn't like was offensive coordinators and referees.
Sounds right. Yeah. Cam, what was your first? School, I would imagine, probably, but
Yeah, definitely in middle school. Mike talked about it. He was always involved, just talking to us and stuff like that. I wouldn't say. It was more or less just talking about football, maybe about the games going on in the NFL or whatever. But I did get to experience it a little bit. I think maybe in JV. I think he was coaching, Jay Moore. I don't know if it was my first year or second year, but it might have been my second year because he decided one day in practice that I guess practice wasn't going quite as well as what he had hoped. And at that point, and at that point, he wasn't a defensive coordinator. He was just, hey, come in here and advise a little bit. He just kind of putting his foot back in, I guess, getting his feet wet. So he comes back over there and he does the most unorthodox thing that I can ever remember on a football field. He said, all right, guys, we're going to play this game. So, okay. So, got in this big circle. I don't know if you remember this or not, Jim. I can't remember if you was coaching then. Anyway, we got in this big circle. He said, all right, the linemen pair up with a back or, just somebody smaller. And we paired up. Well, he made the smaller ones, which I was one of the smaller ones, jump on the back of the lineman. And it was almost like we were riding them around like a horse. And we had to try to not tackle, but pull off the other riders. And completely, I don't know what it had to do with football, but it was his way of, I guess, just getting us where we wasn't so serious and uptight and stuff. But the funniest part about that was, I guess it probably wasn't you. I think it might have been Tommy. Whoever it was came back and was like, what in the world is going on here? And, of course, they didn't question Ray. But that was more my first on the field, I guess, football memories of him. And he wasn't like he was just advising a little bit there, but it was just so unorthodox. But in a way, I think that he knew that we needed something like that. We were stressed out. We were tight. We wasn't playing that good in practice. So I think it was weird, but it spoke to the knowledge that he had, like what we needed.
How many people remember Ray at practice extremely hot? And I know this happened a lot when I was playing, and he would come from the sideline with the lid off the cooler with ice, and he'd allow you one piece of ice.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't let you reach in and get it. He'd give it to you. But yeah, it's just, I think too, it's kind of his way. I carry these other guys ain't give you a water break yet, but I'm gonna give you this piece of ice.
Yeah.
I've heard so many stories about him. Obviously, growing up, at Garden, and my first time I think when I was in like 7th grade, he was teaching, but I didn't actually have him in class. But I seen him in the halls and stuff, and passing, and he would speak to you. But the first like real interaction I had with him was when they consolidated going into my 8th grade year. He got the JV football job, and so we had, I guess, I don't know if you'd call it sign-ups or whatever it was down at the track that day, and there wasn't. I don't know if there was even 11 there.
We ended up with 17.
Yeah, I think that first day I remember thinking we're not going to get to play a full schedule because I see it was not very many, and I remember him, saying, "We'll see, it'll be all right. We'll get more when school starts or whatever," because school hadn't started yet. It was before, and but me, him, and Dad ended up walking around the track a couple times just talking, and him and Dad catching up mainly. But that was my first one, and just listening to him go on and on about anything football related, just random stories, random techniques, things he remembers. This coach from Hayside 19 whatever ran this on 3rd and whatever, if it was this situation, like encyclopedia of basically game film that he's for over the years. And I remember being in awe of like first of all, how do you remember this? But to be that passionate about something, it's everything I'd heard about. And so yeah, now we ended up having a season. And that first year, playing for him was definitely a fun experience. One of the first times I remember him couldn't tell if he was being serious or joking. Was we got into the practice and I told him how you're going to be a starting quarterback, and he said how we're going to do offense. He said I don't do offense, I do defense. He said so. My offense is going to run all the plays that if I was a defensive coach, I wouldn't want to have to defend against. So we ran options and reverses and all kinds of crazy stuff. And but it was a lot of fun. I mean, there was never a lack of entertainment. And what I liked about it the most was you had fun, but it was always serious when it needed to be. Like it wasn't no goofing off. But when it was time to goof off, it was okay too. It wasn't like a dictator that says, "Hey, nobody laugh, smile, or nothing like that." But we're going to be serious about what we're doing, even at JV, which is how it should be. But they don't make him like him anymore, for sure. And I often wonder if he would have been able, if the culture of today was in. I don't know that he could have handled something like that, the way kids are and the way the world is. But maybe he could have adapted, I guess. But he's a true old school guy that a lot of teams around here lack that.
I think a lot of kids would benefit from playing for somebody like that today.
Back to that season you're talking to, I ended up coming down and coaching that team.
Yeah.
And with Ray, and I loved it. But I come to school one day on a Monday, and I'd always go early, hang out with Ray, and he said, "We got a game Thursday." And I said, "Where we going?" He said, "Princeton."
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, "Princeton?" We had 17 kids, 6 of them had never played before. Some of the transfer kids had never seen them. They had some athletes, but
we were basically 8th graders.
Yeah,
the one that played basically all 8th grade. And
he said, "We'll talk to Rogers and see if we can get that canceled." Well, Roger's gone. Roger's not there. So Ray's like, "Well, we'll just call." So he calls his coach at Princeton, or the AD, and the guy's like, "Coach, I'd like to help you." He said, "Well, we don't spend $1,000 on flowers. It's our homecoming." So we're standing out on the sidewalk, and I'm like, "Ray, what are we going to do?" He said, "Can you drive a bus?" I said, "Well, I could drive a bus." I said, "But I don't have a bus endorsement. I've got a CDL." He said, "Well, I know you drive a truck." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I got a license, but I ain't drove a bus in years." He said, "I guess we're going to Princeton." So we go to Princeton, and I hope this isn't too long a story, but it has a point. We done pretty good. I think we scored on them first. Right before halftime, they were up 26. We had a chance to score. Jeremiah throws a pass to my son Cody in the end zone. Ray moved him out to tight end, which is scoring 4th and 4. It was their first game at home. That was the first touchdown at Twin Valley Field.
Yeah.
And so Cody drops it. It hits his fingertips, he drops it. Well, into the game, they ended up, they wore us down. I think they beat us 36-6, but they could have beat us 100.
They had 40 kids.
They had 43
their
kids.
JV was 8th and 9th, and maybe some 10th grade. Yeah,
so
we were very outmatched.
He was just mad again. He just take himself out of the game because he's like, "I'm not doing these kids any favors. I'm not getting on that bus." I said, "Ray, you got to get on the bus. It takes both of us to drive this thing back." So he did, and we got through that. And so fast forward 15 years or better, Cody's graduated, has a son, he's working, and Ray comes in Cody's workplace, sees him, and he's talking to him. Cody said, "We had a great conversation. He asked about you, Dad, and he asked about my son, the family." And he said, after about 10 minutes, Ray said, "You dropped the ball in the end zone at Princeton, didn't you?" Coach said, "Yeah, Coach, I did." Coach said, Ray looked at him and said, I knew I was mad at you over something," and just turned and walked away.
That is the point that what you were saying about his offense was the plays that he didn't want to run again or have his defense against.
Yeah.
He told us that same story.
Yeah, he wasn't lying about that.
No.
And speaking of Princeton, and then I'll let somebody else go, but the first time I remember I got to see him. He didn't do it in practice, but down on all fours. It happened at Princeton on a big third down or something like early in the game. I remember being on the field looking over, and he was literally down. It was the most intense person in that. He wasn't even playing, but he was as much into it as anybody there. But that was my first. I heard about the down on all fours from people, but that's the first time I got to see it.
Before I tell this, I got to preface this. This is a different type story with Ray, but when he did zone out, like Greg said, every now and then he would lose it. But before I tell it, it is Ray, most intelligent person I ever spent any time with around football, and that's been a lot of people. When I played, he came out of is when he's having health problems. It had been my junior year against Honeacre. He came out. He was going up in the booth. He really didn't like to go up in the booth. He liked to be on the field, but he was up in the booth for the first half, and they were gutting us, but it was still a close game. But they were just running on us. And he comes out at halftime and he goes, "Could you play linebacker?" And I was slow. I was too slow. I was probably the only white 6 foot, 180-pound kid that didn't want to play linebacker. Like, put me in a 3-point stance, put me standing up and in, but I couldn't move lateral. But Ray's like, if you will go to linebacker, I'll tell you every play when they break the huddle. Who's packing it, what hole it's going through, who's lead blocking. And I think we held them to 27, 28 yards. They still beat us. Ended up being a 12-point game. They had 26 yards second half. And they would literally break the huddle. I would look over, and he would 26 this hole, and it was there. We'd shift the lineman down, and that was it. So I got exposed to it then. I was like, man, Then we coached Jake the first year that we coached together at Garden. Ray wasn't coaching that year. Me and Jake was helping on with the defense. Jake was offensive line coach, and I had a bunch of sophomores. But anyway, we made a run for Garden standards. We went to a regional championship game, and that's back when it was just 4 teams. That was one of the better Garden teams, and we had a bunch of sophomores on the line, and we win the playoff game. But the week before that playoff game, I went to Ray's. Rife was a juggernaut. They had 2 1,500-yard running backs that were brothers, and they were 10-0. They were the 1 seed. We were the 4 seed. But we played your dad, Greg, the brutal schedule of Lebanon back when they were 2A, Big Creek, you name it. We did the easiest games was the district games. Our non-district games was terrible. So we were like 5-5, 6-4, but we squeaked in the playoffs. We're about a 20-point underdog over there. And I go to Ray's when he was living on the 4-lane. Jake said, "Go to Coach Jones. Let him look this. Let him help us a little bit this week." And he wouldn't come to the door. And I knocked on it. I knew he was there. His car was there. I started back to my vehicle after 5 minutes, and he eased the door open. And I turned around and he goes, "What?" I said, "I want you to look at this. I'm not coaching." I said, "Ray," I said, "I just want you to look at this film. Give us a little bit." It was over the weekend, and we had a week to get ready. He said, "I've already looked at it." All 10 games. But he was kind of bitter at some stuff during that point of his coaching career, and he said, "I'll tell you one thing. When 74 gets a 2-foot split, they're running a counter. And when this person, and they haven't threw a touchdown pass all year."
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there listening to it all, and I'm like, and he said, when 44 lines up, offset this side, he's going back this side, and they were a heavy, unbalanced line counter kind of team. So we shut them down. We played. It was the best defensive football we played all year. And they threw a touchdown pass in that game and almost beat us. But they threw the one. But Ray was instrumental in that. So getting to the only story, when I was playing, he hated the Lonesome Pine District. Hated. When you got ready to play any team from the Lonesome Pine District, he went. When you walked in the film, that's the only coach I've ever exposed to chalkboard films. That everything was on chalkboard, then on film, and he had everything broke down. And but you'd come in and all would be on the chalkboard was LPD. They think they're the best. They're the best district. And he just really got you. Bulletin board material was his thing. He'd have their best player on your locker. He loved bulletin board kind of stuff to get you going. And he would hype those games up. We're playing Clintwood, game 2. And we played J.J. Kelly the first week, and they were ranked like 6th in the state, and they barely beat us. Defense played great. Ray was in his form. Defense done their job. We just didn't score enough points. You know, I told Roger we needed 14, and we only scored 10, you know, and we did our job, and let's move on to Clintwood. Well, Clintwood was ranked way below Kelly in the preseason poll, so you kind of kept up with that stuff. So we're like, we got a shot, you know, going into Clintwood the next week. And they had a running back named Denny Wright. Quarterback named Denny Wright. And he wasn't as good as Kelly's. They ran the same, just like teams now, run spread. Everybody ran the same offense back then. And everybody ran the same thing in each district. So we prepared all week. And he's like, we shut down Kelly's quarterback. This is going to be easy. We got, you know, and he had us, completely ready. And during the anthem, we had like 50 players down. And I look during the middle of the anthem, I look at Ray, and he's going down through every player, shaking their hand, going, if we get beat by 50, it's my fault. If we get beat by 50, it's my fault. If we get beat by, and he said it 53 times as he walked down to every coach, every player. If we get beat by 50, it's my fault. And I was like, what? And what? What's he spazzed out? He didn't kick off yet. And he, what he done in pregame, he would always sneak around behind the other teams. He was Belichick well before. Yeah. He watched warm-ups, and they had moved Denny Wright from quarterback to tailback and went to a pro set offense and was pitching the ball left and right. And he just said, it's my fault. And we were all like, what? And we got beat 50-12. And he went to the hospital that night. He spazzed out on the sideline. Blood pressure got out of sort and had to go to the ER over in Clintwood till the middle of the night. But that was one of the few. He thought he let us down because during the week they switched offense. And Denny Wright was his 440 yards made him WCYB player of the week. So that's why he got his blood pressure up. If
there is one big flaw I can remember anybody ever saying about it was that he took things too personal as far as letting people down. He thought if you lost and his defense gave up more than he thought they should have, it took the whole load on him. Like it was the one thing, because it really probably wasn't his fault. Most of the time, I'm sure it wasn't. Right. But he never seen it that way. It was always he should have prepared better in the week, or he should have had this player in this position. And I think that was, like I said, a lot of his. That's probably the only real thing there was like, which is probably a good thing to have, I guess, technically. But when you kind of throws you off your game a little bit, but that's how he was.
Yeah, if Ray took you out on defense, it was only for a mental or you didn't do something correctly in your alignment. You stunted the wrong way, or you didn't stunt when you're supposed to, or you didn't shift. If you missed a tackle in open space, you were good. Some coaches, that is what gets them. You had him, and Ray, he was okay with that kind of stuff. Never did even get, he was where you were supposed to be. It was always, he thought that if he put everybody where they were supposed to be, he stopped everything. And when it didn't work, he sometimes he took it personal.
Greg, so you coach with him and stuff. So just, I guess on that same point, just talking a little bit about not just coaching, but even as an educator, because you taught with him as well. Did he carry some of that even to the school?
Well, that was something I was going to bring up about. I was going to get a little bit out of the coach in there and speak about him as an educator there. He in life, we're compatible with, some people we're not, some age groups. And as I guess most people thought, because he coached varsity sports, that he was more compatible with older kids, and I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th grade PE with him, and I believe I've never seen anybody that had that tireless interaction with kids, and that he truly had a place for them in his heart and cared for those kids as Ray Jones. And he's the best I've ever seen. As good a football coach, legendary coach that he was that good of an educator too. And those little kids just drew to him like a magnet, and they loved him. And he would get out there and run and play with them. And he always was just super, really quick-witted and intelligent. And and I mean, his little jokes was funny. Then the kids just drew to him. But he was absolute pleasure and privilege to work with as an educator. And he gets most of his accolades, from coaching, but a lot of people didn't get to see how good he was as an educator there, but they definitely got their money's worth of him as an educator. But speaking on the football thing again on Ray, when I coached with him and he was the entertainer and he was the motivator. He was an entertainer, and at times I would get caught up and now what's Ray going to do next? I mean, I just seen him get down on his knees and pick grass and eat it, and spit it and just stand up and shake his fist or whatever. And it was just, entertaining to see what the guy was going to do next. But really he motivated kids. I mean, they got into that stuff. Then when he went out there and that timeout was called, and and he had to go up there and set the defense up, and he's in their face, and pulling their face mask, and he's firing them up, and he got his money's worth out of the kids. I mean, he was definitely a masterful coach in the way he dealt with people. And I don't know anybody that that truly didn't like Ray. If they did, I'll just have to say they had a problem. Ray was a good fella, and Heaven's gained for sure. They gained a good soul with him. We joked and kidded a lot, and I was always at the butt end of his little quick-witted jokes. But we never had a crossword. We got along good. And one thing I'll say about him, and my dad coached together, and they coached the team back in 1986. And Ray was the defensive coordinator. Dad was the offensive coordinator. And that team they coached in 86 is the only team in Buchanan County school history to play for a state championship football game. And those places, state championship games are hard to get to, very hard to get to. So I think there was good leadership and Ray and Dad. And I want to throw in some other assistant coaches. You had Curtis Shortridge, which he's passed away now, and Edgar Childress and Jack Rife, coached, and all those guys back in those days, and Ray as well. They were good leaders and good people, and they were respected people in the community, and they were diehard Dragon people. And I went to school and graduated at Grundy. But, actually played my first ball games as a kid, because Dad was coaching at Garden, but I was a Green Dragon before I was ever away, And anyway, I kind of grew up, knowing some of those people, and I had good relations all along with them. But the Garden community is definitely, one of the better communities that I've worked in. It's just good people.
I think that 86 team, Ray finally, for maybe the only time, had 11 kids on that defensive side of the ball that truly bought into his program and could fulfill everything that he asked them.
One problem that Dad had with Ray and the coaching was that Ray, if like Michael said earlier, he held everybody accountable for their job. If you missed the block or you shot the wrong gap or whatever the call was that you should have done and you didn't do it, I don't care how good you were, he got you by the shoulder pad, you come out of the ball game, put somebody else in. Dad said, Ray, oh God. He said, this guy's He's an all-state linebacker. Don't suck him out. He can make mistakes and make up for them. But that was only quarrel that Dad and Ray had. Ray held everybody accountable. You didn't do your job, come to the bench. You figure it out right here, but then I'll put you back in.
I was living up in Martinsville, and I was following that '86 team. I'd come in and watch them play 2 or 3 times. I was also, of course, Drury Mason was right there close. I went out and watched them play, and they had a good team. Well, a bunch of guys I worked with were Drury Mason, and I told my wife back then, I said, Gordon's coming up here to play Drury Mason in the playoffs. I said, I'm gonna bet a little money at work. I said, these guys ain't never. Because Ray would go in that huddle with that group from defense, and you could see him get fired up. And that game, that defense would buckle down that quick. When he'd get in there and get them fired up. Then you started seeing Red Street break through and get 7 sacks a game, and I told them guys, I said, I ain't never seen nothing like this bunch is coming up here down. Of course, I think it was 6-0 ball game. Because I told them, I said, you're not going to score on them. I've watched your offense. He had a great quarterback. I said, I don't know if they can score on y'all. So everybody give me 12 points. Oh, you're great. I'll give you 12 points. It had been 6-0, and Gordon won it. So, but I think that was, Ray was just clicked with that group. And your dad as well. Just that little bunch of those guys always scrappy. And I think it just clicked, made a head of football team for sure.
That run that y'all are talking about, I remember in our PE class, because at a certain point he was at the high school with us, and he just I can't remember if he was a PE teacher or what he had done, but I remember he was there. He might have even been substitute or something, I'm not sure, but he had film from that year, and that's what we did for class that day. Was watch
extra credit questions for Ray's U.S. history. If you could name the nose guard from the '86 team, you got 5 points. And that was kind of that's how you got a couple extra points in history. I'll tell you, your dad, the way he interacted with Ray was he let Ray he let him do his thing, and they had a really good relationship when I coached and when I played. I had both of them. I had Coach Rife, and I was lucky to have good coaches the whole time I was in high school. And we had an assistant, and we won't name because coaching's a tough profession, so I won't put an assistant on blast. But we had an assistant do some scouting for us that year, and we had to play Big Creek, second game of the season. And Coach Rife sent, and Ray was adamant. We had a game, and they couldn't go, so they sent this, and he was an assistant on our staff, and but they said basically, we don't have to have you Friday night. Go watch Big Creek. They went to watch Big Creek, and Ray was a little bit nervous about, I don't know how good he could scout. And Ray was just telling, I want to know. Well, the guy comes back, and Big Creek lost to like 33-0 that night. And the guy that scouted Big Creek said, worst Big Creek team I've ever seen. He said, we'll handle it. They're the worst Big Creek team I've ever seen. In hindsight, we didn't know Man won the 3A state championship, and Big Creek won the 2A state championship that same season. But we go in, it was the worst team Big Creek's ever fielded. And I'll never forget, that was probably the worst physical beating we ever took the whole time I played was the game at Clintwood that I talked about earlier in this one. And they pulled a guard, a tackle, and they had a wing back. And they just student body left and right. And they brought everybody. And my job and the other end, just turn everything up. Well, I would just go out and get hammered by about 3 people, try to turn it up, and they would turn it up, and they would get 15, 20 yards and score. And it's like 28-0. And I remember going to the sideline. I looked at the other end. I'm like, I'm just going. I'm going. And that's back when you could take out the lead blocker. You do whatever you had to do. So next series, we're out 28-0. I just take a run and go take out the lead back. The ball carrier stops the ball, gets tackled for about a 2-yard loss. And next thing I know, I'm getting tapped on the shoulder like, I got you. And I go to the sideline. Ray's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm trying to help. trying to help us a little bit. And he goes, what, have I ever told you to crash? And I'm like, no. So I kind of tucked my head down because I'd never been taken out by Ray, and he kind of got me pretty good. And I'm kind of sitting over there, 2 or 3 plays go by, and Coach Rife walks by me. What are you doing? Over on the sideline. I said, Ray took me out after I got a tackle in the backfield, He said, Telly Becker told you to do that. So I eased back over next play, and I'm like, Coach, I'm sorry. I said, Coach Childers told me to just take out the lead guy, By God, what's Edgar? Dude, get back in there. So he was mad at Edgar we didn't tell him. I don't know that we ever did tell him. There's no way I get back in, but Roger knew exactly what strings to play to get me back in the game. We just blamed it on Edgar. And Coach Jones was baffled. He didn't know why Edgar was telling me to do something, and I had to listen to the coaches. But I do remember that, and I think he got sick and had to be medically helped that night too. But there's no coincidence. It was only games that we gave up 40 points. That usually was the catalyst that got him.
When we coached together that year in JV, he said, I don't want to do the offense. He said, you call all the plays. But he said, I'm going to ask one favor of you. I said, what's that, Coach? He said, can I call one offensive play? I said, well, sure, buddy. I said, you call me as you want to call. You know a lot more about this than I do. And he would set some offensive play up. He had an off-balance line. He had running backs on the line, linemen in the backfield, split ends playing tight end or in the slot or, everything was just mind-boggling, the way he would set up. I said, Coach, I got one question for you. I said, well, who's getting the ball? Well, it's whoever the quarterback gives it to. It's the guy's going to get the ball. But, I don't even know, some of this stuff if he knew who was getting it. But he really wanted to mess with opposing defensive coordinator's mind a little bit. Oh, yeah, buddy, you think you're smart? What are you going to do about this, But he liked to challenge other teams, other coaches and other minds, in the game. And then I also think he liked fooling with the referees too. Let's see how they're going to move these people around. Which you got to have so many eligible people for passes, and you got to know their numbers. And Ray switching everybody around, but it was funny. But it was like he was doing it to be annoying to opposing coaches and referees. And I think he got his own little charge out of that. By doing that, and which I did too. It's pretty funny. I thought,
do you all remember the defense that I want to say he coined it. I've not heard it, but what was his? You got Buddy Ryan with the 46. You got all that stuff. But, you got the wide tackle 6. You see, but he coined that wide tackle 6 is what we're not in a 6-man front. It's a wide tackle 6, and it was all about your shoulder pad level to it. And if you were a foot out of alignment, he was yellow. And he credited that wide tackle 6 to a lot of that 86 run, that he would shift guys out just a little bit wider to get a little more leverage, just trying to outflank certain areas. But it was it was the very minute details. You couldn't tell if he was just if he was coaching. On the offensive side, you probably wouldn't notice it, but he noticed it, and he was a stickler for. And I remember he wanted a shot later. This is after he'd been out of it for a long time, out of coaching, last 7 or 8 years. He put in for a job, and he said it's because they play a team in their district that's won the district the last 5 years, and they've run the same thing. And I could stop it. He was still watching film of.
Are you speaking of Tazewell?
I'm speaking of Tazewell.
I ran into Ray that day at Grant's, Tazewell, and just in shopping, and he was there. And he said, I was going to message you later. And I was like, yeah, what's up, Coach? He said, I just applied for the head coaching job at Tazewell. And he said, if I get it, he said, you're living up here now, right? And I'm like, yeah. He said, I'd love to have you help. And I'm like, sure, but I said, just give me, yeah. Well, he messaged me on Facebook every once in a while. And then, so it went a couple of days, and he messaged me. He said, well, they wanted a retired coach, but it wasn't me. He said, they chose call, bro. Nick Caldwell, he won't stay, he said. And I said, well, will you try again? He's like, no, I gave them, they said they didn't want me. That's enough, He said, but I could have won 6 ball games for that team.
Yeah.
He said, because I watched them enough, I know what's getting them beat. And so.
I think all along, how brilliant a defensive and football coach in general that he was, but I really think he was on the wrong level. I think he should have been up on a collegiate level somewhere, I think he was more suitable, and some of the stuff, was hard for the younger players to comprehend because he was so short,
In so many years that the numbers were low, you didn't have that 65 athletes to choose from to fill all those gaps. You had sometimes you played the offensive guard, the quarterback. Yeah.
To do what he wanted to do, he needed more. Like you're talking about a high school football practice that's 2 hours long, 30 minutes special teams, 45, 50 minutes of offense. You got, and Ray would get a half hour, and which everybody's got the same problems there. But to get Ray's stuff, it probably required. If you remember, we didn't get to do a whole lot of live stuff. You spent 20 of that 30 minutes proper alignment, walk through, step through. So you wasn't doing a whole lot of, just proving Greg's point. He would have excelled at a higher level.
I think so.
More cerebral. He was just a very cerebral person. Wanted you to understand it before you did it.
Right.
And
He was that way with his coaches too. I can remember when I was doing defensive line, he would say, we got hey Si this week. This is what I need. This is what I need. This is what I need. You find them for me. And I'll take a look and see if that's who we can play there. If they can't do it, I'm not going to jump in. He said, I'm going to come look for you. You know me. You know my expectations. If I tell you I want a 145-pound nose man, you get me some little scrapper in there, that'll do the job. And so he was disappointed with me a time or two. I, made the wrong choices, but I think that was, you didn't have a lot of coaches that would come and say, this is what I expect, this is what I need, and then put that on you in your pocket,
Yeah.
So.
And I think that it's kind of to y'all's point. When I played, it wasn't in the heat of the success that Garden had. I played in the 2014s when I graduated, so those upper years. And he coached my sophomore year, which is probably, I guess, around 2012 or so. And, I think his coaching then, for me, it was a little bit different than what I hear from you all. Not the X's and O's. He always knew the X's and O's. But I think he kind of, in a way, knew that we didn't have the knowledge and the culture there that probably had with Garden back in the day. And he would do, I brought these things. He would do things that I think that he had this feel that the players just wasn't really bought in, wasn't into it. They wasn't having fun. And I don't know if they were. I was having fun. But, it was just a different time, and we didn't win a lot of ball games. And that's not to say anything about coaches or anything like that. I think we struggled to keep numbers and stuff like that. So I also have to play into it. But, for somebody that came up through there, and we were getting beat every game, you start to think, well, nobody really cares. You're just out here doing it because you like doing it. And he went and printed out like pictures of us playing, and specifically like pictures of even just me. And, not that I was doing anything, but he took every single picture that I was even in, and he would give it to us. And not only that, he did these things where I don't know were audio, and you might remember these. They were athlete of the week, and this wasn't given in practice or anything. He found me. I think it was on a bus one day or something. I can't remember, and gave these to me. And I probably didn't do that great to get that. I'm sure everybody got that, but just the thought that you had somebody that cared, that he was paying attention, and he did this little thing that it was Bluefield. I think Daily Telegraph. I was mentioning it, and I only had 65 yards, nothing. But he saw my name on there, and he printed it out for me and gave it to me. And so I know it wasn't X's and O's or anything like that, but it was, to me, I think that he knew that we needed something that wasn't just X's and O's. I think
Some positives.
I
yes,
have
we needed
those,
some positives.
some of those athletes. I probably got a stack from playing for him, and that looked just like that.
Yeah.
They were always handwritten, by him and the date and the game and the score. And if we won a game, everybody got one of those, or I guess everybody I knew. But he was like, if we come together as 11 people on the unit, and everybody's athlete of the week because we got the job done. We won. He was still doing that when I was coaching with him. My son has several of them. Well, we didn't win a lot of games, so he probably don't have many. It was, and I asked him one time about, you give those to everybody, and he said, yeah, because it's not a one-man show. It's a team, and if every athlete does their job, then I feel like they should be recognized in some little way. And so I think, like you said, it wasn't hit away from to motivate people, and Ray wasn't the guy to cut you down or none of that. But he'd say little things. And one thing that comes to mind, and Jody Matney. I don't know if you guys remember Big Jody Matney. Jeremiah, remember him? I'm sure he passed away not long ago. So rest in peace, Jody. But this is a story about Ray. And Jody's a big kid, man. I mean, he's big. And Ray said to him one day in practice, if I ever get you, be as mean as you are big, you're going to be something else. Well, that kind of got Jody fired up a little bit, and he's doing this and that and the other. And I think Ray really got to him here. All at once, man, we ran something in practice and he gets trapped, and my son Cody just cleans his clock, man. I mean, just wipes Jody out. Jody gets up. He's like, I gotta get my breath. I gotta get my breath. And Ray said, come over and pat him on the back. He said, sometimes it's right just to be a nice guy. But he, all year that year, he kind of had a spot for Jody. He would, help him anytime he could. But yeah, he had his way of getting his little digs in when he wanted to.
You mentioned earlier about a 145-pound nose guard. I kind of chuckled a little bit because when he coached my sophomore year, we never really thought. We had a kid that he was probably less than that, Carlos Sanchez, and he was probably around 120, 130, and he put him at nose guard, and everybody was kind of, okay, well, it doesn't make any sense, and all of a sudden he became a priority for the other teams that they would. You got that little nose guard over there, and that's something that Coach Jones knew that I would have never thought of.
Yeah, anytime he was going to run a 5, which he did a lot, they'd run that 5-3 stack early on. He wanted that little quick nose man up there, somebody just getting that gap or
Disruption.
keep that center's hands off so that linebacker could get through. And I don't think there was anybody treasured or enjoyed a good hard hit more than Ray.
No.
I can remember Cody and Jeremiah one day in practice just teeing off on each other. I mean, helmet parts were flying, and I'm concerned about the kids. Here's my boys, Ray's over there. He's standing over top of them, patting them on before they can get off the ground.
I mean,
probably
a concussion in there between one of them. But him coming over, continuing to smacking the laid down and got down the ground with us, and
that should be on a highlight reel. That gives me cold chills. But
he talked about how loud the noise was, and no wonder the helmet broke. I mean,
well, he looked for it. When you walk into on Tuesdays, his film session when you play for him, he'd just say a number. If you was playing Grundy, 37. Better have your head on a swivel. He will hit you. He's cheap too, and he'll hit you out of. He knew like every player and what they would do. He'll crack back you and laugh at you while he's stand over you. He'll stand over you after he does it. And it wasn't a scouting. It was an individual scouting report for every player on the opposing team's offense.
I can remember going with him twice to scout teams, and by the start of the second quarter, he knew everything he was going to run. He'd be right there, and he was going to get the ball. He'd be up in the stands calling, and people looking back at us like, what's this guy talking about?
I forgot to. I know you two don't know this, but when I went up in the booth for Krieger, 3 years, I guess it was last year. Krieger was before he left, came back, but so I don't remember what year. But I was up in the booth for Krieger. We're playing, and I forgot that Ray had went over to Hurley. Ray come to our game. They were open to scout us, and he was in our press box. I was up in the booth with Krieger, and we were winning. Whoever we were playing, we were up, but it wasn't out of hand, so we're having to coach all the way to the very end. And every now and then, Krieger would, he said, who the hell are you talking to, Will? And I was like, Coach Jones is up here. And he went, it just got quiet. He said, why are you talking to him? I'm like, why not? That's what I'm thinking. He goes, he's scouting us. He's whispered in the headset. I'm like, he said, he's scouting us. We play him next week. And I looked over at Ray. So I better go. There we go. And he just ran out. He spent 15 minutes, watched 3 drives with me, and was up there just talking like, how y'all do? We all stopped this play tonight. I was what and he's just talking to me like, I didn't think anything about it. And then Krieger goes,
That's classic.
he's scouting us.
And every question he asked you about had a purpose. Like,
Well, yeah.
I'm sure he had.
Yeah, and you could tell he knew he got me. I mean, he just had that chuckle. He knew he got me.
I remember I had been 8th grade. I guess it was some kind of history class, I guess. But during the football season that fall, he would bring papers around, head it out. He'd have mine to me. Underneath it would have 5 or 6 plays on a paper, and he'd say, "Look over these for tonight." And it would be some of those crazy option things, but it'd be something new for that week. And I was to look over these, so I'd get my paper to the side, and we'd be going over whatever. I'd be looking at the plays for the game, instead of whatever we were doing in class. And as soon as football season ended, to do it, I was like, I guess I have to get used to going, but doing some more work. But what I was about him was he was one of those like, and Dad brought this to my attention because he did it for them apparently. He told you everything that was going to be on a test. He didn't want you to have to, like, he was going to teach you that subject, but he knew it wasn't about who could remember the most. I mean, he was teaching you what you needed to.
Right.
It wasn't one of these. I think a lot of people do these, especially with the SOLs. I guess they gotta try to cover whatever. He knew what he was going to cover. He was going to do a good job of teaching it, but he wasn't going to make you figure out and guess what the test is going to be like.
Or trying to trick you.
Or try to trick you and stuff. He said because he told us if you pay attention to what we go over in class, you'll have the questions basically. That's what's going to be on a test we take. And I always loved him as a teacher. I thought it was great. As far as just the way he went about teaching, it wasn't he never made you feel like he was, I don't know, I'm not sure how to explain it, but I always felt real comfortable going to his class. Felt like I learned a lot, but it wasn't like cramming it down your throat, like, all this stuff like that. But he gave out little awards in class like he did in football. He had little stickers, and he was all about like the visual stuff like you were talking about. But yeah, I like both sides of it. Like I said, I love playing for him, loved having him in class, but he was a good one. Like Mr. Steele was like this, Mr. Mullins was like this, and Mr. Belcher was like this. But if you get talk about a certain sport, Mr. Belcher was Duke basketball. Mr. Steele was Carolina basketball. If you get talking about the right thing in Coach Stone's class, football game, before you know it, he'd be talking about whatever, and class would be over with. So we all, you learned that, and so little things like that, just little memories you go back on. I enjoyed every second, every moment I've ever spent with him. I didn't have a negative. Can't think of a negative.
Y'all remember he used to wear that Ray Lewis jersey
Yeah.
around the track, and I asked him one day, I was like, Coach, you don't strike me as a Ray Lewis kind of guy, And he said, no. He said, I go to Baltimore. That's Ray's family that he visited, mm-hmm. And he said, I watched summer camp 3 different times, and he said, all 3 years, said he was the first one out on the practice field and the last one to leave, and he run gassers by himself after everybody else went in. That's why he liked it. I mean, and he didn't make no bones about it, you know. And that's probably why he resonated what you were talking about with so many kids. Like nobody's got a bad race for really.
Yeah.
That played for him or was taught under him. Is he was so accountable. If they ran something in the game that he didn't go over, and even though you still should have got a stop, but that was a play that he had went over, and they got 10 yards on it. My fault.
Yeah.
That was my fault. I didn't go over that. Don't you know? And you know he didn't. There was no blame game. He was accountable for all the stuff that he done. And kids notice that. You know, you don't notice till you get older, but you probably notice it while you're there. And you know, he never did blame you personally for, even when he probably should have at times, should have blamed for it, but he always was accountable for all that.
Well, aging myself as far as being a student, having him in class was, I can remember health and PE classes, and he had music day. He'd bring his little record player in, and all them little, whatever them little records, 45s or whatever they were. And he'd bring his whole collection of music now, and that's just what we would listen to. And he would tell us what he knew about this artist or that artist, and that's what the whole class would be. In his gym class, he was as competitive in there. If we got a volleyball game going and he got involved in it, he was as competitive there as he ever was coaching. You know, he didn't care to spike it on a ninth grader. You know, it was part of the game. But PE classes were like a presidential award for fitness. I get that thing every year. Well, the first year, I can't remember the times now, but that shuttle run where you lay that crazy eraser down and run back and forth. He was like, man, he said, you get just a little faster. He said, that's going to be the fastest I ever seen.
You was talking about him being competitive. I wonder if he did this year in your time, because I come a little bit after you. You know, there was a little drill we went through called bull in the ring.
Yes.
You take all your players, you put them in a circle, and then you take one guy and you put him in the middle, and you call out a number, and that one guy goes and takes him on. Back when I coached with him, he put his arm guard on, and he was the bull in the ring. He was the one going after. He called a number out and wham.
Every season I played for him, up toward the end of the season, he would come out with his Emery on.
Yes.
That thing was battered up, looked like he was going on with a D6 dozer, and that one old flipper pad.
Yeah, boy.
And he would give everybody a shot.
Yeah, man.
About 6 yards down in.
The shiver was
The first 7 of them, he was set flat as a butt. I don't care if they were all state or, you know, he'd get a little weaker. You know, like back then there was 45 of us, so he didn't kill the ones at the end of the line. He would light you up, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
He would.
He had a good forearm.
He kept after me in that shoulder run until at one time I had the school record. I still have the certificate at home. He's like, that's the fastest shoulder run I've ever seen. You know? So, but yeah, we did weightlifting, we did wrestling. I can remember him actually letting Greg Street and myself. We did wrestling, not pro wrestling, of course, you know, folks out wrestling. And we didn't have a wrestling team, but he told us what he knew. But it come down to me and Greg Street at the end of the year. He let us do the loser had to wear a dress in gym class match. And I pinned Greg real quick, and we got to watch Greg wear a dress off that gym class. So yeah, he was a lot of fun. He's just a good person. A good person.
I know, and I don't know if this was just us being young and, you know, stories over time. We, as kids, make up stories and they just spread. But did he get to try out for an NFL team, or did he have any exposure? Like, because, you know, that was a story that was told when we were little, and I don't know if I ever found the truth to it. And which it might have been the fact that he may have went up to Baltimore and went to all those summer camps and just watched. But, you know, of course, as kids, you hear somebody says one thing and it spread.
And I can't recall. He did try, I don't know, maybe a semi-pro team somewhere other than Emory, though. Yeah. Because he
I know he had some accolades coming out of Emory.
He had got a lacerated kidney in the game. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he was just like, I'm all right. And the coach's like, you're not all right. You know, you're passing blood. But he was just going to keep playing. And I did think it may have been a semi-pro team or something. I but I don't hold me to that because I do remember something he said to me one time that led me to believe that he tried to play at a different level.
And that's something that just growing up, you hear stories. I mean, that's everybody. One person says it, but I do remember you was talking about just him as an educator and him as a coach, always being positive. I remember back then, still, I think I was sitting out there at Twin Valley Middle School, getting ready to get on the bus. I remember where I was, and he was telling me how. Well, I had mentioned, I said, man, I bet that coach chewed him out, stuff like that. And he told me, he said, I've coached for so many years. I have never seen a kid get better by me yelling at them. I will, when I say yelling at them, I mean like, personal attacks, kind of like on me. He said, I've never seen a kid get better from anything like that. Just talking to them, being positive, tell them what they need to do better at, that's where you see the progression at. And I remember him telling me that, and I was probably not even in 8th, 9th grade. But it kind of just reiterates what you all were saying. I mean, that's how he was.
I saw him get a player one time, and this would be every day for most coaching staffs early in the season, but he was trying to go over some live defense, and when Coach Rife would give him a couple minutes, okay, we're going to strap it up, we're going to go live for a couple minutes, and he had a linebacker that wasn't doing what he was supposed to do, and he grabbed him. He said, "Get out, give me a linebacker," and just said, "Give me a linebacker." So this other kid over on the sidelines just buckled his chisel, come running out, and Ray looked at him and said, "No, give me a linebacker." And that kid was a linebacker that came out, backup linebacker. And he came out and Ray said, "No, give me a linebacker." And then he apologized the rest of practice to both kids, the one that he took out and the one that he told not to come out in the field. And I remember Coach Rife was watching it all, as he was doing it. He said, "Well, when Ray gets done apologizing, we'll go to conditioning," it was like. But no, he never was personal, and that's rare. Most defense coordinators are coming at you, and rightfully so. And Ray was loud. His favorite word, "By God, we're going to," But I don't think I ever heard the man cuss, out. But he was fiery and could do it in a way, but definitely not demeaning at any point in time that I ever recall.
He would say all the words, but they're not the. But what I don't know what that word is, but like not a synonym, but something that sounds like.
Yeah.
He went through them all, but none of them he never said the actual one. But he went through, he had another one for all of them. He went through them, but I never heard him. Never once did I hear him actually ever cuss.
The closest thing I ever saw, as far as him getting mad at somebody, Joseph Fletcher, and if he's listening to this, he could probably laugh about it. I don't know if he was on the staff that year or not. I think this is it was my sophomore year, because it was Joseph's senior year. We're playing at Montcalm, and they had a kid out there, Bailey was his name. The only way I remember him, he was the only kid that had like tattoo sleeves on both arms, and he hit hard. Like you knew where he was because that's how hard he hit. And they were doing a little toss out to the right, and the Bailey kid was motioning in, and he was cracking down on the end. And he hit that crackback block that's not allowed today. And he got Joseph in the lower back. And I think Joseph may have even came out.
He did.
Yeah. And we were doing game film. And and Joseph, he's witty as well. He's a funny guy. He's a good ball player too. But we went over that play in film, and you saw him get hit, and it was a bad hit. And Coach Jones, of course, addressed it. He wasn't happy. I don't know if he was out of alignment or what it was. I don't remember the details, but I remember the aftermath because Joseph said, "Well, Coach, you killed my back," or whatever he had said. Set Coach Jones off so bad that he left the room. I didn't see him again. and so I think that was one of those times that, he probably knew, he was smart enough to know that I'm so mad right now that I need to go out this room. And I think Tommy, I think he was in there. We just continued on with whatever we were doing. But it was just that one moment. And Joseph, if he's listening to this, hopefully he'll get a laugh out of it. But we were all scared to death. we need to go check on him. But nobody wanted to be the one to check on him either. So
I think the only person I seen make him real angry was Coach Colley from Eastside.
Oh yeah.
Because it was like a running game with those two, I think. He was going to run something that he had never shown publicly against us if Ray was anywhere around. And he'd go, I knew he'd pull something like that I'd never seen before. Or he would change one little thing. Because he was, Coach Cox was a good offensive coach and Ray was defense. You put those two together, he was mastermind offense. And I think him and Ray, that was a little thing Ray would always say, I wonder what he's going to do this year. Wonder what he's going to do this time, And it'd always be something. I told you he'd change that or he'd do something different because I had him figured out. So
I would give it anything to have them two sit in a room like this and just listen to them talk.
Once we have them sit around talking about the athletes, none of us probably will listen.
Yeah.
I got in a room with the last year. It was the year before Greg Mance retired at Richlands, and we had a golf tournament for Richlands football. There's a lot of us sitting there after it was over. Conley came in late, didn't get a golf, but he showed up for it. And when them two sat, like where Coach Rife and Jeremiah's at, and it was probably 15 of us. And for the next hour and a half, nobody spoke except those two, and it was football. And they went back and forth, and they had just admiration for each other. There was, but it was interesting conversation, good conversation. When they get in a room, it was X and O's. That's kind of like with Ray. It was, if you was around him, you were going to talk football, and he remembered players, just stuff that the average, even a football fanatics like probably all of us are, I have no clue.
Right.
He would remember. I remember in JV, he would tell it be going over like play or something practice. He would say some random name. He'd say, I had a player. We'd run this against this team one year and whatever year, and he'd say his name, and he supposed to line up here, and he didn't. He lined up here, and that did whatever. And like this, some guy nobody's ever heard of 20 years ago. But he remembered that he looked at that one spot on that one play in that one time, and that was like little things like that. Is like he remembered all those. Like I don't know if he remembered any win he ever had, but he remembered the little.
As you remember, he never would get involved in special teams. Kurt was a special teams coach the whole time I played, and he never would get involved with the kicking game at all, except for when we were getting ready to punt. If the other team had any threat whatsoever back there, he would come, surely God, you're not kicking this. Surely God, I'd go for it on fourth down, try to kick it, and have you so stupid to kick to that. We shake so many. Well, thank God Jeremy King was there when I was there. He just punt it for 60 yards and forget it. So, but he would come running down the sideline. Surely you're not kicking this guy. Like he's run two back. So he would get involved in that.
Something I wanted to do was we mentioned it beforehand, and I know that we won't be able to probably tell all of them, but just some of the favorite little one-liners that Coach Jones had. And it could be anybody. I know for me, he wasn't really a one-liner, but he was the first person I ever heard say, this guy was a Scud missile or whatever, and he had certain positions. That's what he would call one of them, and I never heard that before. But
I know son of a biscuit eater. Was a big one. That was a good one.
And the highlight reel. But that was that highlight.
Yeah. Somebody said it earlier, and I had completely forgot about it. But as soon as they said it, I could hear him say it with the fat tackle.
Oh, that was fat line up over the fat tackle.
Yeah, everybody apparently had a fat tackle. Well, I've never heard him not use it. So that's the fat tackle. There was so many good ones. I just can't remember. I remember it was a dude every day. You'd say you shouldn't laugh at practice, but he would say things just to make you laugh.
Yeah, he would. Yeah.
Her today, gone tomorrow. Who said that?
Yeah.
I remember I was, I guess I was subbing maybe when he was still teaching PE at Twin Valley at the elementary school, and we'd be in there, and he'd run his laps, while they were out there. But he would go around these little kids and do things, just do little things, like tap on the shoulder, be on the other side, or say something, and as he would run away, he'd put his hand over his mouth, pulling at him, and start laughing at him, and they'd get so mad.
Had the buzzer
yeah,
ring.
little things.
I can remember he'd shake your hand with the buzzer ring. Then it was just.
I remember the laps. I forgot about that. But yeah, he'd be in there running laps.
They run everywhere. Yeah. You probably know this because I think you might have helped paint it. But how did the decision go in to put him on the big mural, the paint, and how did he feel about that?
I did help paint that. I can't remember Ray's decision on it or his reaction to it, what he said. But Johnny Hagerman, the art teacher, got a bunch of pictures out of the yearbooks and whatnot, and kind of polled the students of who they'd like to see on that wall, and then took the top so many, and that's who we painted up there.
I thought that was an old school picture of him right back when he had
He had the Fu Manchu.
Because I always remember knowing that was him, but I had him. I look at him and look at that, and I'm like, I don't even look anything like him. But
I'd love to have a picture of that.
And I'm assuming it's still the same.
As far as I know, back there in the back hallway, I guess. I know my mug's on there with my mohawk.
Yeah. He doesn't strike me as the type of person that would have liked having a picture of himself on a wall, but but if anybody was going to be on there, he needed to be.
And we talked about how friendly he was to everybody, kids especially, that he taught. But Ray didn't really get real personal. He didn't have like best friend or a real strong relationship. He kidded with you at practice, and then you see him again tomorrow. And I think he was like that in his personal life for the most part. But I did see something the first year I coached. They was honoring the 86 team. And this was in, I guess, this would have been in probably 06, maybe 96. 96, I guess, 10 year. But he hadn't seen Johnny King. And we were getting, because I remember we were talking about it on the way at halftime, we're getting beat pretty bad. And we were like, well, we'll put on a good showing for the damn state champs. The state runners out here, we're getting beat by Rife or somebody, pretty bad here. And we're going up at halftime, and Ray was bad. We got a bunch of points, and Johnny King said, "Coach," and he turned, and he hadn't seen Johnny, he said, since he graduated. Johnny looked different. Ray kind of looked at him for a minute and realized that's who it was. I mean, I've never seen anybody just stopped, went over, hugged him, smiled, and then Red Street was behind Johnny. Hey, Coach, and hauled at him, but he went over there, and he was just, you could tell, that was probably the closest bond that he had with anybody that I see,
I felt on him when I get a Facebook message every once in a while. And with that, the last one I got from him was, 6-8 months before we lost him, and it just said, "Old coaches fade away." I still have the archive saved on my phone.
Yeah, and now I think that I wish that I would have got a chance to even sit down and talk to him when I was very young, when I got to meet him, but even just sit down and talk like this. I mean, he probably wouldn't even enjoy doing something like this, but just to be able to hear, I would have really loved to hear his whole life story, because we all know him as Coach Jones. And I think there's just so much there that, because I just imagine him being a little kid, being just mean as could be, and not giving up an inch on anything. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of the way that I view him. Maybe that's inaccurate, but just knowing him towards the end. And you mentioned him being on Hurley's staff. When we interviewed Coach Tester, he had spoke on that. And that really speaks to how brilliant of a mind he was, because those teams that Hurley had were some of the best teams they've ever had. And, for him to, I guess, be humble enough to know that we got all this talent here, but we still need help. And to go to Coach Jones, I think that just kind of speaks on just on both of them, even Tester's humbleness to understand how smart Ray was. So,
I can't remember. There was something he always told us, a story from his past, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it was. But he, to be so, I mean, we've all kind of went back to it, but to be so intense on a football field, he liked to laugh probably like, I mean, he was always cracking up. Like that was one of the coolest things about it was I don't know anybody else that could go from that serious to that funny, that relaxed, that quick. Like most time, if you get that high up and that intense, it takes a while to come down. But he was as soon as the game was over, unless it was one of those where he needed to walk off or blame himself, it was fine. It was back to regular Coach Jones. But that was later on in life. That was when I played for him in 8th grade. So that was several years after he'd coached the Garden. But yeah, I enjoyed every second, like I said, of ever spent with him.
Before we close it out, has anybody got any stories they didn't get a chance to share? I don't want to cut anybody off from not sharing one. I think I've really enjoyed this. I think that this episode we're year 2 into doing this, and we've had a lot of special episodes so far, but I think this one kind of means something different. I don't know, just hearing the stories and stuff, because I think within our community, he's such a legend that it's almost like you see him. For me, being a younger person, I met him, I played under him for 1 year, but to hear the history behind the legend more, for me, I really enjoyed it, and I know kids my age and younger will enjoy it, and I'm sure even some older ones that coached with and played under him will really enjoy hearing the stories and stuff.
I don't know that we did him as much justice as we could have. I mean, it's just 4 of us. I mean, there's so many memories and stories that we could bring 4 more in next week and do the same thing for weeks on end.
Right, they're going to recall things.
Yeah,
might
they're going to remember
jog their
that, yeah.
memory again.
When Greg was talking earlier when Coach Rife was talking earlier about that state run a little bit and how rare it is for a Buchanan County team in any sport, especially football's been done once, to make it on that kind of run. Greg would have been the only, maybe Jake, but you would have been around him more during that time period. And just probably how invested in that process during that year would you?
Man, that's a serious time. I mean, the level of intensity was, I have to say, is much higher because what was at stake. I mean, every game counted. You couldn't lose. You lose, you go home. And they had dreams and aspirations of making it to where they made it, and they made it.
Yeah.
It was a serious time.
Yeah.
During that time, I believe my grandmother passed away during that time on my dad's side, and when they went to state, and that was a tough time, for him, and it kind of puts a little more burden on your assistant coaches, from Ray to Kurt Negger. Then I don't like to start mentioning names because sometimes I don't want to leave anybody out, but all the assistant coaches, during that time, which I know y'all come along after that time, but definitely y'all did a good job too as well. Good people. But yeah, it's when you're playing for higher stakes like that, and Jeremiah made it there in basketball, the intensity goes up and it gets a little more serious, don't it, bud? And I think with that team, and it's not just the coaching staff, but I think the players, you got a chance to go to a place that no team has done before and to compete on that level, on the highest level, and to have that opportunity as an athlete, it's what we all dream of, and I think intensity at the highest level, during that 86 run, that whole run. I don't think they took a game off. I don't think there's anybody that we're going to take any slack on it. We're going to take everybody serious, one game at a time, one play at a time, one stop at a time.
They played a bunch of tough teams.
They played tough teams. They had a tough schedule.
And Quint with big Powell Valley won about 33 straight games, 34 straight games.
Yeah.
When they came in there.
Was that the band left early game? That story where the band left early thinking they'd won and then.
No, that was that homecoming?
That was Clintwood homecoming. Is that when Clyde saved homecoming?
Yeah.
I was a sophomore, and the band left. They were up by 28, And I think Ray was up in the press box that night. I think he even came out of the press box. And then Kevin Shorts got hot with Jared Deskins, started it. And then things just started rolling second half. And it was just, we went from a running team. Coach Rife was we're going to run the football. And then he let Kevin just loose. And I think he threw it like 20-some straight times in the second half. And
My sister.
threw a Hail Mary on the last play of the game. The band was gone.
I've heard that. Still.
I was there.
There might have been 20 fans left in the stands.
Yeah, they all lived early.
And they were packed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they stopped down at, I can't remember where they got the news. And some of them tried to come back. Back to them. They got all the way to Van said, got it on the radio, and turned around and came back. But, that was that game kept, we wouldn't have went to the play. We went to the regional championship my sophomore year. And if we would have lost that game, we wouldn't have made the playoffs. That was a big win. And Clintwood was pretty good back during that time, but that was Kevin Shores played lights out that night, if he's listening. So
Quarterback.
I can't imagine you talking about how tense and serious that year, because I've seen him coach a Twin Valley JV team and it be that level. I would give anything to see what he was like that year for that run they went on. How if you can even get to, I didn't think it would be possible to get to a more intense than he already was, but I would love to have seen that. Yeah, watch his preparation and being like a fly on the wall, watching him watch film.
You know, I'll just be honest with you. During that time, man, it wasn't just the players. It wasn't just the coaching staff. It was the whole community was intense.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was in on that game.
Yeah.
In on that run of games, from district, regional, and state.
Yeah, like I say, I was living in Martinsville, and of course, I think they opened up that year and lost to Big Creek, maybe opened the game, and
I think Pennington might have beat them too.
And then when I come and watch them at home, I thought, man, this team. And next time I see them, they were getting better, And then I would hear the away games. I'd hear about it, read it in the paper.
Hurley had a really good team that year, and I believe they were undefeated.
Yes.
And we played them at the Cliff, and Ray's Great Wall of Green. Their defense scored the only points that was scored, 6-0. Mr. Jones, thank you.
Yeah, and I think they were averaging, out of the running back, it was averaging over 200 yards a game. They held him like negative 21 yards.
The whole
Right.
street.
We're false, Greg.
And I think they held them to negative yards on holding that one off.
Did Ray sleep something at the school during that state run?
I doubt it. Oh, he could have.
No, at the school.
He was there, whether he got any sleep or not.
I mean, did he stay overnight at the school?
To watch film and stuff, yeah.
He probably did.
I wouldn't doubt it.
We had talked about even, which we didn't know a lot of them, or if they'd even be interested in having that state
We
team.
really wanted to get somebody from that team, but
And having or even like if we had enough, and maybe people listening to this, maybe we'll have success later on about doing an episode just of that team, just the stories of that team.
There were some characters on that team. The players were characters.
I grew up
I
hearing
was at Randy McNulty's.
stories about Red Street. Like that's all Dad talked about was Red Street.
Reds
Like
was tough.
that's what it was a common name growing up.
First team All-State linebacker.
He
Yeah.
was around the area.
Yeah.
160 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
5'8",
I don't
5'9".
know that he
Randy
That's the
McNulty,
thing. We
first team All-State.
who and all
Was he-
would,
Tackle.
Offensive tackle.
and who would be around to do it. But yeah, that would be a team we would love to honor at some point. And I think
I
that,
talked to Ropey sometimes.
I think it would be a good
He
one
would
to
probably
have.
do
And just to your point, talking about everybody's point, talking about the competition back then. Jay Moore was on an episode a few weeks ago with Brian Moore, who's the head coach at Rich Lawrence was head coach at Twin Valley, and y'all were talking about basketball wise. Back then, getting to that level meant so much more than maybe what it does now because of the way that things are lined up. And I think in football, I think it's changed some to a degree. Maybe not as much as basketball, but yeah,
even football.
Even football.
Yeah.
There used to be 4 teams that made the region.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, it
Yeah, so
wasn't
it was-
split up. It wasn't split up. Was it split when y'all played on 86? It
Yeah.
wasn't. Was it split up into like a small division and a big division for single A when you played?
It had just started.
Just started. Okay.
Yeah.
So that was the last time they really
Yeah, so I was just
But as
kind of
far
making the
as-
point that him getting there with that team then
Oh yeah, it
was
was.
probably a lot tougher than what it would be even
Oh yeah,
today
yeah. It was
to
it
get
was
to that
single,
level.
It was single A and no two divisions in single A.
Yeah.
I don't think it was everybody.
Because my playing days, it was
And
Yeah.
see, I don't think they
you had
counted.
that one division, it all ended at Appalachia
Yeah.
usually.
I may be wrong, Jeremiah, but I don't think they counted your strength. I don't think they factored in your strength of schedule. If they did, it wasn't to the degree they do now.
It wasn't a weighted schedule then back then like it.
It's you get a little more credit for it now playing.
Yeah.
And Coach Rife and Ray would make reference to it. He would tell us, I've scheduled Notre Dame.
Oh, no, yeah.
If they would let, that was one of his favorite. He said, I'd play Notre Dame if they let us for the game, you know. And,
Although I carried on well into the first years when I remember when we played, we still were playing that Coach Rice.
well, he had us in the grid. Remember the year that Roll Retreat called? It was my junior year. Roll Retreat called said that they had a problem around the track and was going to have to cancel their jamboree, possibly on the Monday before the jamboree. So Coach Rife was trying to scramble to get us in the Gridirama, and that's back when that's back when that was the premier preseason tournament. You had Graham. I mean, it was just powerhouse 2A schools. And Coach Jones was like, we don't. he didn't want to have to scout somebody before we went, you know, but that was his premise. But he really meant we just don't want to go get her. But Coach Rife would play. Oh, my God.
Like I said, when I was in school, when I played basketball for him, played Princeton AAA state champion. You know. But, you know, his thought process was, he was always thinking at the end of the season, because we had those discussions. I said, why are you playing these teams like this? You know, you're going to get killed, you know. And he said, well, it's all about preparation, not for right now, but for postseason preparation. If you play soft teams, you're not, when you get confronted with a team that's a hard team, you ain't got to change. But if you've been a little bit prepared by playing these guys and knowing not just their strengths and weaknesses, but your strengths and weaknesses as a team and how we can make adjustments, then we got a chance.
Yeah.
And he always believed in playing, and it didn't matter football, basketball, whatever, but the competition.
Well, all the playoff football games that when I coached for your dad and then played all 3-4 playoff games that was won, which is a lot for Garden. I mean, that's probably 4 out of the 8 that was ever won. And we were always the lower seed. We were the 4 seed twice, beat the 1 seed. And then that one year that, all 3 years that we coached, that we were the 4 seed, barely got in.
Yeah.
You know, and then ended up beating a 1 seed. And that was probably our strength of schedule. Like I said, the Rykov example, they were scoring 60 points a game. And
Well, I'm going to give you an example of that 86 team. You look at Hurley that was undefeated that year until they played Garden. You know how many teams, how many losses Garden had that year in 86?
I think 3.
They had at least 3. That's regular season losses.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I'm not comparing them to Hurley in that situation, because Hurley was a really good team, and Hurley could have done really well, I think, in the regionals that year too, because they were good. They had a good team. But I do think that tougher schedule throughout the regular season prepared them for the because there was no easy games when you got into regional and state play. None of them was easy games. I mean, some of them were close games. The state championship game, Garden scored the first touchdown. They were 7-0. And then they run off 3 in a row and made it 21-7. And that's what it ended up.
One of those should have been called back. I was there and I seen it. It was quick.
But, you know, in Buchanan County, I mean, and I'm not saying anything, it's not meant to be a prejudice statement, but, you know, speed has not been, you know, favorable to our county. But I'll tell you what has, you know, work ethic and strength, you know. And we've had some strong guys that you know, were able to excel and to overcome speed deficiencies. And we've had some good coaches throughout the county.
Oh, yeah.
Grundy's had a good football program, you know, along with Garden, and Hurley's had a good program, you know, and they've had good coaches. But, I think our county, like I said, we never have been really blessed with a lot of speed, but we have been blessed with good, strong athletes. It's hardcore guys, that gets fully invested into the cause.
Yeah, a lot of the running backs on their guards, you had John McLaughlin, Benny Smith, Kyle King, Terry Shortridge. I mean, just these. Morgan Clifton was one.
Tough guys.
Hard
nosed, hard runners.
Yeah, 195, 200 pounds, just straight ahead. And your dad loved that kind of ball, that kind of back.
He did. His thinking, as long as we got the ball, they can't score.
Yeah. Yep.
And he, that was his philosophy. If we got offense, we got the ball, they can't score. And then he's playing against a team that's more talented, more speed. It's probably a pretty good philosophy. Kind of like freezing the ball a little bit in basketball. And I didn't like that kind of coaching.
Not getting off subject, but I think that's one of the biggest problems with the drop in enrollment numbers in Southwest Virginia. What's happening all around us. Nobody goes back to 3 yards in a cloud of dust.
Eliminate some athletes.
You've seen these teams. Well, I can give you a team for an example. They worked for 3 weeks setting up a fullback to rate 300 pounds. We were going to run this guy right down everybody's throat. Well, as soon as that didn't work the very first time, we scrapped that offense and never run him again. We threw the baby out of the dish.
I think the same program you're talking about also put in a spread and was on a down 6 to a team that they had no business being in game with, but because we did, it was 6-0. We moved the ball, but we keep the ball out of their hands. It was 6-0, and then he's like, "Well, it ain't working."
Yeah.
Well, it actually is working. We're just not scoring. But then change it halftime, come out like 50 something, but
take that 12 to
right, yeah.
12 or 18 point loss.
Right, yeah. So the same program. There's a common denominator in that program.
I had a chance to talk with Tom Turner from Appalachian at a coach's camp one time, and that talking about legendary coaches. That guy churned out team after team after team, state champion runner up. One of the smallest schools in the area, but I asked him one time. I said, "How do you just continually doing that?" He said, "I don't change my program. I change players."
Yeah.
And he said, he had his notebook. He said, "This will be full of plays at the beginning of the year." I found out I got a bunch of kids that can't run some of it. I just tear them out, and I pick out 10 we can execute.
That's smart.
And I stick right to them. And he said, "I will not change. I have a bad season. I'll still stay with what I'm doing." Of course, being you having the luxury of having 60 kids to choose from, that's a little easier. But still, I watched another local team, and it was Tazewell when I first moved to Pearland. I watched them, and so many just good athletes that, in my opinion, and I'm no great coach, weren't where they needed to be. I think Ray or your dad, myself, Mike, could have put these kids in a formation to where it wouldn't have been fancy and it wouldn't have been flashy, but you would want some ball games because they had a fullback that was about 235 pounds. That was just a machine. Hardly ever got the ball. He was blocking. They were throwing, running trips, and I was thinking, just give that kid the ball. Because every time he got it, it's 3.5, 4 yards. So,
one last Ray story. I'm kind of going along with what you said. Do you remember Britt Coleman?
Mm-hmm.
And Britt was a tough running back. His sophomore year, though, he was kind of overshadowed. You had Jamie Hill, Jason Dales, and Britt was a sophomore. They were seniors, and that's the year we went to the regional championship game. And he was kind of the third option. And your dad knew. He would say, Britt's probably at the time maybe the best backer. One of these as good as these other two, and he knew it. That kind of kept him rein. So we'd run him maybe 5-6 times a game, and it was usually off a counter that had been set up from other stuff. And so his average per carry, man, was way better than our starters, but he had 100 less carries. Well, Roger couldn't go to the all-district meeting. That's back when you had to go in person and all that. So he told Kurt and me to go to the all-district meeting, and he gave us a sheet of who he wanted to get on. Kurt got sick. Had to get Ray and me to go to the all-district meeting. We didn't have any trouble. Back then, it was pretty much Collie, once you decide who you want
Yeah.
on first team, we're going to fight for the rest. And we finished second in the district that particular year. So we got our players that we wanted, but we was trying to find a way to get Britt. And then back then you had honorable mention, all district or whatever. And so Ray didn't like those kind of things. He didn't like being in those all district. It wasn't his cup of tea. Didn't even want to be there. But he's just reading the chart that Kurt had laminated for him, and he said, got a sophomore running back, number 32, Britt Coleman, 33 carries for an ungodly amount of yards, like 500 yards, average, 10.2 yards per carry. I'd like to get him on honorable mention. Well, Collie was trying to get his guy that had similar numbers on, and when Ray read that out loud, that he averaged him, he goes, well, that was your all's problem against us. You should have ran that kid more. He averaged 10. And Ray didn't say a word. And then he got in the car. He said, Kurt sabotaged me. He was blaming on Kurt. I was like, no, he wasn't on purpose. He thought Kurt had, he said, Collie got me.
That's right. I hate to cut it off, but I think we got to be here by 9. But before we do quit, I want to thank y'all for coming on. I've had a blast.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Hope
Thanks
y'all
for having me.
enjoyed yourselves. I would love to do another one of these. I would love to talk about your dad, Coach Rife.
He had a lot of story he could share with us.
Yeah, that would have been. I would love to get one. Maybe get him in here and a couple guys that play for him. Get Uncle Jeff and a few others. I would love to do one like that. That would be a lot of fun. But yeah, I really appreciate y'all. Cameron, you got anything?
Yeah, I just want to second what you were saying. Just thank you for you all coming up. We all had to travel a good bit. And it's not, it's 5 minutes down the road. So I'm very thankful for that. And I think, like I said, I'm like a little kid here just to listen to all these stories. I think it's amazing. But I also think it's great for people to hear these stories because here soon, Buchanan County is going to be, consolidating. And some of these programs, so which I know Garden had already consolidated, but I feel like even with Twin Valley, Garden was still there in some ways, whether it be through Coach Jones or just people in the area. But when it consolidates, things like this, I think are just so valuable because it's going to go to the Eagles and they're going to make memories and stories and they're going to have their own thing for years to come. But stuff like this, I treasure it so much, and I hope that the people that listen do as well. And just people are listening. Next week we will be starting on-air player interviews and stuff like that. And one thing I hope with what we do during the year, we done it last year a little bit too, but we interview these players and stuff. But one thing I hope comes from this is that these players that get interviewed, that they also take the time to, let me go watch this episode about Coach Ray Jones. I ain't heard about him. Could be from Buchanan County. It might be somebody from Richlands or somewhere else that takes the time because they're on this show that I want to go listen to some of this other stuff that this podcast is putting out. And the legend of Ray Jones lives on. And so that's what I'm hoping for with that. But I am very thankful for you guys for coming. Y'all have anything before we get off here?
No.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Appreciate you for having us, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah.
No problem.
Yeah.
Good to see y'all again.
Yeah.
But just for the listeners, me and Cameron will be at home. If this might not be out tomorrow, but
It'll be out in the morning.
we'll be out in the morning. If anybody listens to this, we'll be at home after 11 tomorrow night. Come and say hello to us. Whatever. Yell at us. Tell us we suck. I don't know. Whatever. Buy me a hot dog. Whatever you're feeling. It don't matter. But so we'll be back next week with talking about week 1 of high school football. And like I said, have some players on. We appreciate y'all.
Thank you again, guys, and God bless.